The title of this video is Communication Tools. These are things that can help you get your message across. Sometimes there are very specific tools for very specific purposes, but it's useful to have a number of tools in the bag so that based on the situation, you actually have a better chance of success. Let's go through some of these tools that I've collected over the years. First, think about passion. I had a chat to an industry employer today, and they said what they look for in an interview and in a cover letter is passion. Think about the topics you know, the topics you love, and what the audience is actually interested in, and aim for that center point. Be enthusiastic, show passion. If you find that passion, your boss will know that you will not be satisfied until you've reached a successful point in what you're working on. Passion is so important, enthusiasm is so important in acquiring a job, in relationships, in all areas of life. Passion is just so important. Here is an elevator speech tool. These are some key questions that you need to have in your mind. So in the famous scenario where you bump into an executive in an elevator, you've got exactly 30 seconds to get your message across to them and change their opinion of your project and possibly of yourself. Tell them about the problem. Tell them about your solution. Tell them about your direction, why it's important, what they can do to help. You have just over a minute to do this. You should always have an elevator speech on you. Have it in your back pocket. You never know when the opportunity might come. You've got to take advantage. Another very useful tool for dealing with a lot of people is a stakeholder engagement strategy. This is where you think of all of the people that you need to talk to about your project. Put them into a matrix like this and you identify, are they responsible? Are they accountable? And are you consulting or informing them? There's a difference between all of these things. If you're informing them, then no matter what they think, you're still going in that direction. If you're consulting them, then what they say, how they respond, might change direction. If they're responsible, it means they have to do something to help you. And if they're accountable, it means that they have to answer to somebody and they actually will be asked to explain why the project has failed. So once you've listed all of the people who relate to your project, you work out what they're interested in. Then you figure out how you're going to talk to them, how you're going to communicate with them, when you're going to do it, and what will really speak to them. This is a very useful tool because it means that you look at all of the people that you have to engage with and think about how you're going to talk to them. Like I said, engineering is way more than about the numbers. You're in a whole ecosystem of different stakeholders. And if you're actually going to progress the things that you care about, that is solving challenging engineering problems, you actually need the environment to support that. Here's another very useful slide as well. In government, you have the concept of the brief. Decision makers, all the way up and down the chain in government, make decisions based on briefs. So what is a brief? It's a document which explains why a decision was made. So if anybody later questions that particular manager, the answer is always, it's in the brief. Let's unpack this diagram a little bit. There's the intersection of three circles. What you may do, that's the authority. Are there laws, regulations that constrain the sorts of activities that you can perform in that particular domain? Is what you may do. Then there's public value, what you should do. There are a whole bunch of questions to ask around all of these things. Will people agree with it, or is it contested? There's what you may do, what you should do, and finally, there's what you can do. How much does it cost? Do you have the money? Do you have the people? Do you have the training? All those sorts of things you need to consider. Now, note that this actually contains all of the executive questions. What is it? Why now? So what? Who cares? What next? Those very high-level questions that I spoke about in a previous video all turn up here. But these are the questions the decision makers in government have to be able to answer when they pull a brief out of their pocket, when they're asked to explain why they did a particular thing. Another useful communication tool, let's do that again. Another useful communication tool is the framework of executive consequence management. This is how executives think when a disaster strikes in terms of these particular impacts. also known as PESTLE: political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental. If you're having a chat to an executive following some kind of a disaster, identify the way that these particular factors are turning up in their conversation. And if something's missing, you can then jump to that point and mention one of these things. That'll show that you understand more than the mathematics. Now, funnily enough, there is a world expert in apologies. Peter Sandman. When there's a major catastrophe, like a major oil spill, who do they go to? Peter Sandman. Look online. His is a fascinating world. He specialises in crisis communication, reducing outrage. Some might say he's the preeminent spin doctor, but he's hired by governments all over the world to handle crises. This is his 5-part formula for giving an apology. And I went to a really fascinating seminar where he looked at all these companies that he was dealing with that followed part of the procedure or did the procedure in the wrong order and the consequences of getting it wrong. It's well worth looking at his site. Anyway, the 5 steps are: 1, say what you did and expect to be yelled at or hammered. Take it, okay? Let people vent. If people are angry, let them vent. Get it out of their system. Just take it. Step 2, say how you feel about it. I feel terrible. Number 3, make it right. Correct the problem, fix it. Step 4, compensate your victims. Actually try and fix things with the people. And 5, do some kind of a penance. Actually do something to show that as an organisation you're going further than just simply paying compensation. Actually show that you really are sorry for what has happened. Now, if this is useful in a professional setting, it's even more useful in a personal setting. So keep that in mind as well, in case you ever need to make a personal apology, both at work or at home.